In the US, we see them as leaders, and their CEO has always been, whether it was Steve Jobs, whether, Tim Cook, etc., is someone that we all look up to. So we need to see them also leading when it comes to employee rights and employee treatment, and then also just company culture.
So welcome to the second episode of 2022 Proxy Watch TV or our YouTube channel. So today I'll be talking with Dr. Christine Hall from Nia Impact Capital from United States, and we'll be talking about their campaigns to Apple. And this will be the second time that we will be interviewing her, because last time we asked her about their campaigns to Tesla. So let's get into discussion. I'm so excited to interview Christine today. And you filed a shareholder resolution to Apple asking reporting on its concealment clauses. Could you tell us more about what is the problem with Apple right now?
Sure. So similar to the issues that we had with Tesla and across the portfolio in the US, these concealment clauses from forced arbitration for employees or anything like an NDA. Now, some of these can be a problem when they're for employees. Of course, particularly with our tech firms, but with all firms, there is some the IP, the intellectual property that happens at the company, that you're working hard to develop, that's their special sauce, and that's something that really does need to stay private. And you can't just take that and run to another company, or, how can you be an entrepreneur? How can you start a company if you don't have some protections to what you're developing inside? So we don't have problems with the NDAs or any of the clauses where you need to really keep that private and secret because you're working to develop that, whether it's Tesla, Apple, or any of our firms. What we do have an issue with is when there are silencing employees about their own experience about working there, and particularly when it comes to any kind of discrimination. So in the US, we have big issues with sexual harassment and racial discrimination, and that could be for any groups. So we can't tolerate that in corporate America. We can't, not only can we can't tolerate it, it really inhibits the ability to build a diverse team, to build a place where voices feel welcomed and heard. And then it also, when we're looking for diversity at the top, we're also looking for diversity on teams. And so we're really needing women and people of color to feel comfortable and to rise within these firms. So anytime there's any type of behavior that is often systematic, these clauses can cover that up. So it's hindering the company's ability to attract, retain, and promote top talent. And then these clauses also are problematic for investors because they cover up any potential risks, potential problems, and there's less transparency. We can't see into whether there is an issue or not. So there might not be an issue, and yet these clauses are problematic because we can't tell.
Thank you. I think I believe you have, but have you detected any specific problematic cases, specific cases from Apple, or are you in touch with a group of Apple employees already, for instance?
Yeah, so that's really interesting because similar what we talked about with the Tesla is we weren't actually aware specifically of any issues. We just knew that systematically, as far as programs and practices that lead to an inclusive and positive workplace environment, that these could inhibit or prohibit that development of what we want to see as investors. So we didn't actually know before filing of any specifics. And yet, we're that small firm that does file, puts a stake in the ground and puts it out there, and then employees are able to see, oh, we might have an ally. They care about what's going on for employees. And that's actually one way that we find out about these things, because then people come to us and or attorneys come to us because they are trying to represent some of these potential clients, and the laws and the clauses in place prohibit them from raising a suit or bringing this to court because things are stuck in arbitration. So we end up finding out about more of these after than we actually knew about before.
Thank you. What is changes like you want from Apple?
Well, we need more transparency for sure. We need them to, and also, I mean, if you think about it, they are our world's largest company on any given day, right? They're global. They operate, there isn't anyone, that brand recognition, we all have that. And so, for them to be leading and see themselves as world leaders, in the technology sector, but in addition, they see themselves as leading on environmental issues. Whether or not they are, that's one thing, but they really do. And in the US, we see them as leaders. And their CEO has always been, whether it was Steve Jobs, whether, Tim Cook, et cetera, is someone that we all look up to. So we need to see them also leading when it comes to employee rights and employee treatment, and then also just company culture.
Thank you. We'd love to, hear more details because I'm wondering what's the difference between the cases from, Tesla and this case?
Yeah, sure. So I would say that, a lot of the tone starts at the top. And so we have very different CEOs, certainly. And so we know there's very different company cultures. And also just the business line is very different, right? So yes, there are outsourced factories with Apple in countries where we don't really know as far as human rights, what is happening. With our proposal and our resolution, we're actually only able to ask about US. We ask about globally, what's happening, and they're talking about making recommendations for the US. We will look outside of that. But as far as what's the difference, there are certainly factories where we don't know what's going on with Apple. So those things are similar as they would be with Tesla. But with Tesla, they already had a very bad reputation for racial discrimination. And we had heard anecdotally that women had a really hard time making it at Tesla. And what we call here the bro culture of the patriarchy and the men in charge really is pretty palpable at Tesla. And they're not trying to hide that, so it's interesting because they kind of tout themselves with that. Nobody at Tesla, from the top or anyone else is saying that they're leading in diversity. They're certainly leading in innovation. And when it comes to innovation, the research says that the diverse voices, inclusive voices, when you feel that you can bring your whole self to work and really show up and share ideas, and ideas are heard, then we're going to have more innovation, more IP, more ROI, so revenues coming from innovative products. So we want to see that for our companies. At any rate, Tesla seems to have really made it really far without having the policies and practices that we think they should have. At Apple, they actually have a very different ethos. They have a very welcoming ethos. They have they really were designed in the beginning for the educational sector. And so there's kind of a love about education and democratization of being able to use their products. Now, whether that's actually true, that's something else. But the ethos of the brand is much more positive, I think. And so we expect more from them. So we would expect that they would not have concealment clauses or that they would be using forced arbitration. And in fact, when we started these negotiations, the representatives at Apple told us that they did not have forced arbitration. And we believed them. We were in very cordial conversations. And yet it came out that because we filed this, we then had other people sending us their employee contracts where we were seeing forced arbitration and mandatory arbitration in these clauses. And so that's problematic because you can't lie to your investors, and you certainly can't pretend to not have this when you're dealing with the SEC in the US. So we're in a problematic situation right now.
Thank you. Your campaign to Tesla, had made also the massive progress right now because the approval rate from the investors went up to 46% from 27%. So that was being, tremendous, moving forward. And do major institutional investors, Apple or ISS Grassroots, they seem to be getting on board with this as well?
Yeah, I think they will. And so thank you for pointing out those numbers, because when it comes to shareholder resolutions, those are pretty darn high. Some journalists have asked us, how do you feel having lost? And we don't feel like we've lost. We feel like we're making some major strides. And of course, I think you all know on any given day, Elon Musk owns, from 19, although he's just sold some shares, so we'll see, but, about 19 to 23% of the company. And so if you take away those shares and those votes, then we won by quite a bit, so we're considering that we're making major progress. And as we spoke last time, one of the things that we didn't even anticipate was that we're raising this issue for the employees and helping them understand the issues so that they can really be advocates for themselves, and we can really just back their movement. So to the extent that they can build this movement and we can be supportive of that. I mean, it could be our movement, but it's going to take all of us to really understand why this needs to change and how to change it. So as far as what can investors do, absolutely, we need to have them vote, in favor of our proposal. We've had some good news already. I think it came in yesterday, and Kelly's in charge of this piece, is that already some top investors are asking us to do a call with them to explain things. So we have some of the major wirehouses reaching out to us, which is new, that hasn't happened in the past. So we do anticipate that we'll be able to educate more people about why this issue is important, and then get those large blocks of votes from some of the large institutional investors.